The book is a collection of economic articles written by Levitt, an expert who has already gained a reputation for applying economic theory to diverse subjects not usually covered by traditional economists. He does, however, accept the standard neoclassical microeconomic model of rational utility maximization. In Freakonomics, Levitt and Dubner argue that economics is, at root, the study of incentives.
Chapter 1. What do school teacher and sumo wrestlers have in common? People in different cultures and walk of life who are inclined of honest, they find subtle way of cheating to advance their position or to increase monetary worth when incentives are strong enough was described by Levitt and Dubner in this chapter. There are case study of the effect of incentive, public school teacher in Chicago, sumo wrestling in Japan. The first case considers a group of ordinary people, school teachers, performing an ordinary task, testing their student. Levitt and co-author developed a computer algorithm to look for string of suspicious answers on standardized tests. An analysis of data on the test score of children in public schools in the Chicago public school system revealed evidence that teachers cheat by substituting the right answer on student tests in about 5% of class taught. Some teachers face possible sanction if their students don't perform well on standardized tests. They may see cuts in funding for the school, or worse yet, they could lose their job. So teachers react in one way would never think a teacher would they cheat. Sumo wrestling in Japan, which synonymous with Japanese national pride, is practiced by only the most honorable of men. Yet, the analysis described in this chapter provide evidence that a significant number of sumo wrestling bouts are actually rigged when it really counts. There is compelling evidence that sumo wrestlers whose craft is inserted directly with honor in Japanese culture appear to cheat as well. The Freakonomics data in this chapter suggests that a wrestler might throw a match to help his opponent maintain his current rank. Incentive and how people respond to them is a recurring theme in Freakonomics. Levitt and Dubner consider the study of incentive to be tantamount to the study of economics. Incentive come in three varieties: moral incentive, by which one acts out of conscience of conviction; social incentive, by which actions are related to shame or glory; economic incentive, causing people to act in their financial interest.
Chapter 2: How is the Ku Klux Klan like a group of real estate agents? This chapter is all about information, the advantages it grants to those who have it, and the information asymmetry causes them to have the power over people, the disadvantages it imposes on those who do not, the ways it can be misused, and the ways it can be abused. The first part of the chapter describes how the Ku Klux Klan covets its beliefs, and the members' feelings of sacredness towards the organization are what make it so powerful. The exclusiveness of the club is what made it so appealing to individuals. Secret codes of the Klan are what make it so special, and when this confidential knowledge was revealed to the whole world in such a frivolous way, the Klan broke apart. When the rest of the world found out about the Klan's little traditions, the traditions weren't important anymore and didn't hold the same significance. The remainder of the chapter explores how specific individuals can capitalize on an informational advantage by exploiting informational asymmetries, as well as human emotions such as fear and sorrow. Real estate agents have a much better sense of the current condition of local housing markets than do buyers and sellers. They can combine this superior knowledge with the buyer's or seller's fear that he or she won't be able to find a house, sell his or her house, to achieve a deal which is in the agent's best interest but not necessarily the best interests of the buyer or seller. The same can be said of funeral directors and car salesmen. The chapter also considers the effects of misinformation, e.g., misrepresentation on corporation balance sheets, and the potentially discriminatory behavior that can flow from incorrect or biased information. The chapter concludes with a discussion of the misinformation people post on internet dating sites, and how voters respond to polls. Consumers try to maximize total satisfaction, while sellers try to maximize profits. This explains why real estate agents don't work to get the highest price possible for the seller, and why funeral directors sell someone who has just lost a loved one a high-priced casket the buyer doesn't really need. In the first case, selling more quickly makes it easier for the agent to sell more homes, making more total profit. In the second case, the seller can take advantage of the buyer's vulnerability and, in so doing, increase his profits.
Chapter 3. Why do drug dealers still live with their moms? Adopted some examples of conventional wisdom which are evidently not true. They noted that even though the conventional wisdom may be wrong, it nonetheless may be hard to correct. Conventional wisdom is often created by experts in field. They made observations and drew conclusions without resorting to the facts. Their conclusions, then repeated by the media and by other experts who referred to the previously stated error and gave credibility on it. The repetition often happened. An error began to be considered as the truth and thus become accepted by society as an unquestionable answer to tricky social problem. The chapter then goes on to overcome and tune out the conventional wisdom regarding to drug dealers. It as there are or which. They did it by describing how Stephen Cates, a Ph.D. in sociology, acquired detailed financial record from a Chicago crack gang. Through these records, significant information has been gathered from the operations, organizational structure, and financial dealings of an extra-legal American business. Several economic themes emerge from this chapter's astounding tale. Fixed and variable cost of production. This chapter presents an interesting and simple example of the cost and revenues of a firm. These revenues of Yeti's stage of the Black Disciples came from the sales of drugs, dues paid to the gang, and rack rent. Expenses include the cost of drugs, fees for the directors, weapons, mercenary fighters, salaries of the officials, dealers, and foot soldiers. Let's consider how Yeti's cost might vary at some different levels of production. Considering that Yeti's gang does not produce drugs, Yeti is the gang leader. Supply, demand, and equilibrium price. The example of the Black Disciple street vendor shows an immutable law of economics. Whenever there are a lot of people willing and able to perform a job but does not pay well, $3.30 an hour to be exact. In a capitalist society, intense competition will drive prices down. Therefore, if many people are able and willing to sell drugs for a gang, each person ends up competing with the other. It drives the wages gap off.
Chapter 4. Where have all the criminals gone? This chapter considers a variety of possible explanations for the significant drop in crime and crime rates that occurred in the 1990s. Based on articles that appeared in the country's largest newspapers, the authors compile a list of the leading, commonly offered explanations. The next step is to systematically examine each explanation and consider whether available data support the explanation. What the authors in fact demonstrate is that in all but 3 cases, increased reliance on prisons, increased number of police, and change in illegal drug markets, correlation was erroneously interpreted as causation, and in some cases the correlation wasn't even that strong. The last few pages of the chapter focus on an explanation of the crime drop that had not been addressed until much more recently, the effect of legalized abortion. The discussion summarized the result of a study conducted by Donahue and Levitt that appeared in the Quarterly Journal of Economics in 2001. The upshot of that analysis is that approximately one-half of the drop in crime witnessed in the 1990s is attributable to the legalizations of abortion in 1973. This conclusion is based on statistical and econometric analysis that focuses on, among other things, the characteristics of criminals, the increase in the number of abortions following its legalization, and the characteristic of those women most likely to get an abortion.
Chapter 5. What makes a perfect parent? The chapter begins by reviewing how many parents get educated on raising their children and how parenting experts swing from one extreme position to another in an attempt to get the attention of risk-averse parents. The authors then consider what motivates parents and others to worry more about certain risks than others, focusing on the effects of fear and a misinterpretation of available data. The bulk of the chapter is spent exploring various factors most people would expect to be highly correlated with, as well as causes of student performance on standardized exams. Broadly defined, attention is focused on what parents do versus what parents are. Many a childhood hazard which generates media noise and an eye-catching crusade turns out to be far less risky to children than death by swimming pool. These data illustrate the consequences of asymmetric information. In this case, parents do not have access to, or the capability of, absorbing and critically examining the information available regarding risk. While the manufacturer of a new safety-enhancing product has an incentive to promote his product by talking up the risk being avoided.
Chapter 6 Perfect Parenting, Part 2, or would or should by any other name smell as sweet? This chapter continues to explore the question of what impacts parents have on their child's success by focusing on the effects, if any, of the child's name. Citing a considerable amount of analysis of data on names from California, we learn at least 3 things. 1. The names chosen by black and white parents are extremely dissimilar. 2. A child's name is not a determinant of success but rather a predictor because of what it conveys about the child's parents, and what that means for the child's likely economic success. And 3. Names tend to cycle through socio-economic strata over time, moving from higher to lower strata and eventually out of favor with most parents.
Freakonomics believe these following principles. First, incentives are the cornerstone of modern life. Second, the conventional wisdom is often wrong. Third, dramatic effects often have distant, even subtle causes. Fourth, experts from criminologists to real estate agents use their informational advantage to serve their own agenda. And last, knowing what to measure and how to measure it makes a complicated world much less so.